All right, it's firing up right now, and we are live. All right, so going to start off with a few introductions because we have quite a few people sitting in with us. Howdy, my name is Alberto Coronado, and I'm the media director for the Quidditch Post. We are about to start a series of podcasts focusing on the Southwest region and, well, today the Southwest region, but over the next 31 days, the US Quidditch region as a whole. We are made up from 8 different geographical locations and competed in Kissimmee, Florida on April 8th and 9th at the USQ Quidditch Cup 10. It was one of the most amazing displays of Quidditch that I've actually gotten to see in person. I got to sit behind the sidelines for all of these games, teams fighting from all around the country, just really having at it. And we want to do a little bit of breakdown, a little post-Quidditch Cup discussion on how teams played out, because those 2 days are really a lot of Quidditch crunched together in a small amount of time. So I'm sitting here with 3 spectacular other Quidditch players, and I'd like to allow them to introduce themselves. But just a little reminder, Albert Coronado, and I'm going to be representing the Lone Star Quidditch Club for the Southwest region for this podcast. I got to play with them this season and had a spectacular time. Is really one of the least skilled people on this team of all-stars. Just was amazing to learn from them, and it was a great experience with them.
I'm Alexis Wynn, but the back of my jersey says Peaches, so that might be how you recognize me. I'm a beater for Texas A&M and just recently became an assistant coach for the next season. And this is definitely my first time doing a Quidditch podcast, but Albert invited me and I'm excited, so that.
Howdy, I'm Adrian Martinez and my jersey says Martinez. I beat for the Silver Phoenix and just became the IT person for Texas A&M Quidditch organization. That's about it.
Mr. Appleby?
Well, I am Hayden Appleby. I am the president and captain for Oklahoma State Quidditch. I've been for a few years now. I think this is going to be my 4th year with leadership roles. And so I will obviously be representing Oklahoma State.
All right. Well, nice to finally branch out of state, because the Southwest region, you have a lot of teams that are just from Texas, and I feel like we get a little absorbed with talking about a one-state region when there's really a lot more going on.
Yeah, we've always talked about that, which is why we started always coming down to see you guys and play against you guys. Hopefully learn a little bit, I guess, in the past.
Oh, yeah, learning has always been a great thing. OSU has actually been a spectacular partner with helping us get some game film up from the Quidditch Post.
That's true.
Can't thank you guys enough. Y'all get spectacular film with Miss Giselle. Y'all get it edited and out so we can watch with the scores on there. Love watching it, and can't thank you enough for making Quidditch more accessible to the community. Well, not even nationally, but internationally. I've gotten messages from people all over the world trying to say how much they enjoy watching film of teams that play so far out of the region and can play in such different realms of Quidditch. The atmosphere is really different.
Yeah, I've always been a sports guy my whole life, and so film is a huge part of any kind of a sport and developing a sport in general. And I've been a big proponent of developing Quidditch since I joined. And our coach Amy and I really decided a few years ago to just try to film everything we could. And then we had help setting up basically a film person, which was Brett before Giselle, and now Giselle does it. And everybody's just done a fantastic job.
Oh, love watching it. I've edited all too much of that time, and seeing those orange jerseys just brings back a good place in my heart. So now that we've gotten a little bit of introductions out of the way, kind of broke the ice a little bit, we're going to start with travels to Kissimmee, because not all of us can fly there on a broom like Harry Potter. So we have to talk about the funding, the ways that teams creatively fund, the way that they drive, they fly, or go by sea to make it to Kissimmee. I know that we had it in North Carolina or South Carolina the last 2 or 3 years.
It's been the past 3 years.
And so having a little bit of a different travel arrangement this year might have prompted teams to travel in a different way and play a little differently now that they didn't have to sleep in the same town or the same area. They might have had to fly a little bit. Mr. Appleby, since you were geographically a little farther away than the 3 of us, since we had a bit of a communal experience, would you mind telling us how Oklahoma State was able to make it to Kissimmee?
Yeah, the last 3 years, I believe, we have driven to every national tournament because it's so much cheaper on our team. We're mostly self-funded. We have to do fundraisers and stuff like that. And so we rent vehicles through the university. They rent through Enterprise, and then they deliver them to us. And so we get a discount rate through the university basically to rent vehicles and drive there. The first year we ever qualified, I believe we flew. And that was because it was in Florida, and it was great and all, but it was super expensive and costly on an individual level. And so we try to reduce the cost as much as we can for individuals, and driving is the best way to do that. And And yeah, so that's how we do it. We're lucky that Oklahoma is like really smack dab in the middle, and so pretty much East Coast or West Coast is within driving distance technically for us.
Yeah, I know there were a lot of teams that were worried when the bids came out, or bids for Oklahoma versus, was it somewhere in California?
San Diego, right?
Yeah, San Diego. Big difference going San Diego, Florida to middle of the country. Did that get any of y'all excited whenever y'all saw those bids come out?
Oh yeah, we were for sure rooting for Tulsa. Most of us here have been to Tulsa, and we love Tulsa. It's a great city. Tulsa for us is kind of like the Austin for Texas, I guess, if you guys want to put kind of a comparison.
Okay.
And so it's a great city, and they had a good facility and everything. There's obviously lots of reasons why the USQ chooses what they do choose. And as a team, we always talk about them like pretty much in detail. And we weren't like mad or anything when they said it was in Florida. It's just a better like touristy area. When one of their reasons would be more people, more spectators and stuff like that, which I totally understand. But I do know that my sister has played softball forever, and they always have the softball championships at OU. And I've done a little bit of research on that, and none of the teams really complain about it because it's in the middle of the country, so everybody kind of has the same amount of distance. So I mean, I could see it from both sides of the spectrum.
Makes sense. It's really a fight when it comes down to the monetary side of where they're going to hold something for the players, for the spectators, or for the people running it. It's a lot of logistics to hold up in the air. Now, Adrian, would you mind talking to us a little bit about how Silver Phoenix made their way down to Florida?
Well, part of Silver Phoenix and A&M, since we're part of the same university, some of us decided to drive, and we rented out a van that seated like 15 people plus minus.
Big van.
Yeah, and it was quite an experience cramming 15 people in one van, especially coming back, because we had all types of souvenirs. We brought
not much space at all.
No. And we got my coach Ryan McKay. We got him a big broom from one of the vendors. But it was the broom was at least like 8 feet long.
Yeah, the thing was huge.
Yeah,
It wasn't short enough for the imagination.
So we shoved that there and all types of souvenirs. So the drive back was definitely more of an experience. Not to mention the people that were sitting next to me, they kept falling asleep. They're pushing me off. It was like the only thing holding me was a seatbelt.
The downside of driving.
That's why I tried to ride shotgun.
Then you fell asleep on Harris. I heard about that.
1 hour.
If you're ever riding shotgun as a Quidditch player, driving nationals, stay awake for your driver. Got to keep people safe. I can't believe you got to Florida and Harris was so tired he was just better. All these people were just asleep. I just wanted the people to be awake. Talk to me. He ended up rapping by himself for like 3 hours.
That sounds like Harris.
We're not driving. He raps by himself.
That he is. That's Harris Coleman, a beater from Texas A&M, one of Peach's fellow beaters. If you wouldn't mind talking to us about y'all's travels down to Kissimmee.
Yep. So most of us, since we are not a club sport, I don't know if we've addressed that yet. Like, we can't get supported by the school because they say we're too dangerous. We have to raise a lot of money on our own, just like OSU, and a lot of that comes from dues and doing random like profit shares and fundraisers. And most of us had to pay for the flight by ourselves, but it's nice because the organization was able to give people a reimbursement at the end of the season. So players, depending on if they paid their dues or owe anything to the organization, they should get a $60 refund. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Oh, wow.
Or 50, it's either 50 or 60. I can't remember. And like, unless I made that up, is that the right answer? I haven't gotten mine yet.
I want to say
It's the opposite.
it was 60.
60. Okay, so it's a decent amount of money that they're giving back to try and help people who had to fly, and that way, we're kind of seeing some results from putting in dues to something that honestly costs so much money. Like, a lot of reasons in A&M's past that we would lose players and they wouldn't be able to come to tournaments is because they couldn't afford it, and they couldn't afford the traveling. And that's one reason we had a really short roster 2 years ago, I think. And so the organization's got a lot better about making sure we spend money on things that we need to spend money on, that we save, and that we're really trying to help out our players so that our organization can do its best. And I think it's shown because, we were able to both of our teams made it to World Cup, and then we were able to fund for both of our teams. I think we completely funded the van, right? The van was free for everybody. I think
No.
Was that not true? Okay, well, last year that's what we did. Last year the van was free for everybody because the organization paid for it,
So
which was really nice.
It's a work in
Yeah.
progress.
But last year we didn't have as many people in the van. We took like a Chrysler versus this year they took like the big industrial van, and so
differences in travel accommodations.
right. But it was cool because, and then also last year we only had to support A&M for that, so there was only like 8 people, and we were paying for a smaller van. But I think most people flew this year, just because it's saves on time, and then if people had class or something, it's a lot easier to get back, a lot less tiring. But overall, I don't think there were a whole lot of travel problems. I think it overall went pretty well.
I've heard all too many stories about teams that have lost tires and didn't have someone that could figure out how to change at the right time. 3, 4 in the morning, issues like that. I remember trading out the rotating shifts between 2 or 3 people driving to just New Orleans when we go down to Wolfpack.
Yeah.
And I know how difficult that can be, and it can really change how teams play, in my opinion, when they get down to that tournament. Quidditch, even though we've been around for 10, 11 years now, is still growing and making it accessible nationwide for our little USQ. I really, really envy the European Quidditch organization, how they're able to do their structure just geographically. They can act as so many different countries, but being able to drive from Germany to Spain, France, and all these locations without having to drive, 14 hours to try and get out of Texas? It's a little different. I think that can really make it easier on teams that are trying to, easier on their pocketbooks that are trying to make it down there. I know fundraising can be really hard for teams, and it's really essential for a lot of teams making it to tournaments and to national stages. I know that there are a lot of issues with that happened at the US, or at the Quidditch World Cup that was held in Frankfurt, Germany this past summer. And there are different teams that weren't able to attend purely because of monetary reasons. And that kills me. It absolutely kills me that our sport is dragged down because of money. I love the experiences and the encounters I get with getting to interact with the people at Quidditch, not having to worry about the structural finance of the game, not having to worry about how tournaments are run or running about refs, because we have the amazing people that are scheduling it all from USQ and IQA that give these ref tests out, that make sure that they're compensated and try to make sure that it's fair for everyone. I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to them for making it playable on our stage and help giving us a stepping stone to not have to fundraise as much and really take more time away from our school, our work, or any other parts of our lives when we just want to play Quidditch and be a part of this big Quidditch family. I'm going to use that as a little segue to talk about, let's see, Land or Sea. What were y'all's favorite stories from traveling in Kissimmee? Like when y'all first arrived there, I know that there's that little groggy jet lag, getting off the plane. I flew there, so it took me a couple hours. My family went to freaking Magic Kingdom the day we got into Florida. So that wasn't too much an issue for me for resting, and it felt like I got to play a little bit more at ease, knowing that, oh, God, I'm not just tired. I'm not so 2-3 hours off my schedule. What are some of the stories that y'all have of reading? Because I got to get run over by 6 different kids while I was in Magic Kingdom after I'd been sitting on an airplane. So I got very, very bitter at the happiest place on earth. That was... Who was that?
They thought you were up in Yetta.
Oh, man.
Alrighty, let's see. What are y'all's favorite stories from traveling?
Oh, well, I had a really solid Friday, I'm not going to lie. So me and my roommates who also are on the team, they're Rachel Nicoletti, who's a chaser, and then Courtney Youngs, who's a beater. We decided to fly in really, really early that Friday at 6 a.m., and then we went to Universal and spent the day at Harry Potter World and stuff like that. And then for A&M, there's a tradition that you get your Aggie ring, which is this thing right here, and it's basically your school ring. And there's a tradition where you dunk it in beer and you try and drink it as fast as you can. But we missed that day, so we dunked it in butterbeer at Harry Potter World, which was pretty fun, and I won because I was hungry. I couldn't taste that day because I had a sinus infection, and that stuff is very, very dense and sweet, but I couldn't taste it, so I was like, I just want to win. And then they were like, oh my gosh, but they're gonna hate me for saying that. But anyway, it was really fun to just see a lot of random Quidditch people just running around in their element, and we can all just kind of bond and be kind of little nerds together, because not everybody who's in the sport really even knows Harry Potter. I didn't read the books until last year, and I was like, maybe I should, so I did. But it was really, really fun to just see a lot of the community out from all over the nation. And that was just getting to spend the day there. It was really cool. It's a different change from South Carolina, because when you're in South Carolina, you're literally the only thing there is the Quidditch. So it was cool in the sense that we were able to do something that was outside of just being there for Quidditch. We could it was almost like a little vacation in a sense, because it was a touristy area, like you said, and
Good
That was
location.
definitely fun. That was really fun.
Nice.
For like of all of my 3 nationals experiences, that one was probably like the most fun, I would say, like outside of the actual tournament. But, yeah.
Mr. Appleby, any Oklahoma State stories to share with us?
Well, for us, we leave on Thursday night, and then we drive all the way there, and then we drive all the way back Sunday. And honestly, for me, I absolutely love the road trips. Yeah, like sometimes you get tired and you're just like, oh, this kind of sucks. But like, you know, they say that you never really know a person until you go on a road trip with them. And you know, 20 plus hours is a pretty good amount to get to know somebody. And and so you get to hear, you know, everybody's stories, and you know, it eventually comes down to like what they like and what they don't like. And we learn a lot about each other, and we learn, you know, how we can make our program better. And it's, I don't know, I really enjoy the road trip and hanging out with people. I guess this year we didn't do anything too crazy, but 2 years ago, I do have a story. It's about a corn dog, and my roommate, my best friend at the time, who played with us, was really craving a corn dog. And we spent about 12 hours driving, and every gas station we stopped at, which was like 3 or 4, he went in and he couldn't find a corn dog. And so my other best friend, Amy, I think she was driving at the time. So we finally stopped at this last gas station, and he goes in and he comes back out. He's really angry. He's really pissed. He's like, I can't find a corn dog. And so he sits down in the car and he's just moping. He's just mad.
Moping about corn.
Amy and I, and we see corn dogs on the hot dog rollers. And there's 2 of them. And she's like, you know what would be really funny? If you buy both of those and then eat one in front of them. And so we actually did that. I bought both of them. And when we got back into the car, we like get all our stuff out of the bag or whatever. We start driving, and I start eating a corn dog in front of my friend. And he, are you serious? You bought? Where'd you find that? Where'd you find that corn dog? And I was like, dude, they're on the hot dog rollers. There's only one left. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm eating it, and it's like awkward silence for about 5 minutes. And I finish it, and you know how there's like the little crumbly bits on the stick?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, do you want the little crumbly bits?
Savage.
And he freaked out. It was hilarious. And Amy couldn't stand anymore, so she grabbed the bag and she gave him the other corn dog. I was gonna make him wait for a couple more minutes, but it was a hilarious story that we'll never forget. I will never forget that story. Quidditch, that Quidditch trip will be with me for the rest of my life.
That's awesome.
All right, well, Adrian, I'd love to talk about one of those stories too, but we'll lead off with you in the next round, just to kind of keep things moving along with our time frame so we can talk about as much as possible. Next, we're going to talk about prior to the pitch, not just travel, but the actual practice and what all 4 of our teams did leading up to nationals throughout the season to build the team that we were able to display on a national stage. I know there are plenty of roster changes that teams undergo during the season. There are plenty of injuries that happen even right before tournaments that aren't even involved with Quidditch. How did y'all teams prepare for going to Kissimmee? Were there specific drills that y'all wanted to do? Were there ways that you would try to instill in players that you need to show up to practice, you need to watch film, you need to communicate with other people around the country? Even list out a favorite drill of yours if there's anything that really comes to mind. I want to find out how you teams really made it there, and I'll end off with a little bit of Lone Star practice.
Oh,
take us away, Mr. Adrian.
Well, that's actually probably one of my favorite stories because I wasn't meant to play Quidditch Cup 10. As I said, this is my first year playing, but it's not my first year involved in Quidditch. And originally, it was going to be Mr. Bryce Scherer, but in regionals, he hurt his ACL. So then they put our friend Joe Martin to beat. And then Stephen Williams, he broke his hand. Like,
injury plague.
This is how.
This is
freaking.
Southwest region.
What's it called?
Oh, Scatterball.
Scatterball. Lone Star started that, I'm pretty sure. It was Scatterball, and somebody kicked, or he just got, his hand just shattered. And I was like, I always have been against this game. For one, because I just get bludgeoned in it. But
you're a beater. You're a beater.
It's too close.
It's different.
And so I've been hearing stories for years of friends that have been involved with this community internationally, because I'm originally from Mexico. And the nationals, United States Quidditch, it's the stage to go to. And I absolutely, I can't believe it. I didn't believe that, well, it's, I look like Augie. Like,
You're a wizard, sombrero wizard.
You're a wizard, Adrian! Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And so when that happened, my coach, Ryan Bobbitt, came up to me and he said, okay, so we're between you and our other leader. Come to practice, work hard, but I'm going to be honest with you, I think we're going to give it to Micah. And I just looked at him and I said, challenge accepted. So I went, and I remember the last day, we were at the keeper zone. I beat both beaters. I beat every chaser, and even the keeper. Because I forgot I can't be in the keeper zone.
Get in the zone.
And they came up to me. You got it. You got the spot. I cried a little bit.
Oh,
I worked so hard.
I can, just as a testament to Adrian, he worked his absolute butt off from the moment he saw Quidditch, from the moment that he saw that he could be on the pitch, be on a broom, and inspire other people, his family at times. He has worked his butt off, and I can't tell you how proud and just amazing it was to see all that hard work finally pay off and just show that the dedication really does matter. If you show up to practice, if you do put in the hours when you're away from the pitch, when you're away from the people trying to score the hoops, you can still make it. You can still get there throughout the season. So I couldn't help with the Mexican.
Yeah, it's just
ongoing Mexican joke.
I don't know if you remember the first time. I know the first time I met her. I don't know if you were there. They were having an open drill at Texas A&M, or an open game, and I had just gotten out of a job interview. I was wearing a dress shirt and dress pants, dress shoes.
I remember that. I was proud.
Yeah, and y'all had an open game. Okay, now the audience can play. Really? Yeah. So I just rolled my good pants with dress shoes and everything, and I was keeper.
He is a bit of a keeper.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that y'all were so tall. I'm 5'9". I'm short.
Some
we
Hispanic
do have
gene, man.
some tall dudes.
Lanky.
Sometimes,
They feed corn down here. I don't know what makes them grow so much.
Who knows?
Teachers, training techniques, especially coming from the new assistant coach. I'm going to harp on you for that for a little while. Since election just rounded out here.
Yes, quite. Throughout the season, we'd had a lot of roster issues. We had people that were not showing up. We had people that were getting injured. And then sadly, within this past semester, the spring semester, we lost 2 players to ACL tears, Ian and Austin Erickson, who was one of our captains this year. And that hurt a lot because Austin is a 3-year veteran. So that really hurts on the field. Yeah, and
helping with the new guys.
And he's very good at passing. So that was something that we were upset about. And then we'd had some just chronic injuries that kept people from being able to play in most of the tournaments. So I don't think we had a single tournament this semester where we had 2 of the same roster, which really hurt, I think, our team chemistry. So really what we had to work on going into to nationals. Was just getting people to really come together and show up and do the work. Because I know some people were getting discouraged because we were just so inconsistent in our rosters and our practices that people were just kind of like, well, why?
What's the point?
What are we doing? And then within the 2 weeks leading up to practice or leading up to nationals, our practices changed completely. People were really on fire and they looked really, really good. So I think it was just people realizing hey, this is it. This is we all really want this, even though we've had kind of a rough up and down season. Just kind of getting in that mindset more than anything, because we really have the athleticism and we know what to do, especially since a lot of our team are veterans. It just took people realizing hey, we need to start really, really working hard and focus, and we do want this in order to get in that mindset and be ready for nationals.
Get back to the old nationally ranked A&M team.
Oh yes.
Yeah, one of our friends, Clay Anderlin, we had him on one of the earlier Quidditch Post Digest podcasts talking about the Southwest region. Was part of that group that really made A&M one of the cementers of the Southwest. When you talked about teams in Texas, especially around the College Station, Austin area, it was UT, A&M, and community teams that started popping up. And it really started to bring up the debate on whether or not college teams were going to be able to keep up with community teams. Mr. Appleby, would you mind talking to us a little bit about y'all's training techniques for how colleges are staying in the fight and staying in the mix?
I'm not going to say that we have more of an advantage, but I think it's easier for us to be an actual program with regular practices and having everybody basically at the university. It's much easier to build a program like that, which is easier for us to be more consistent. And so, like, even if, like you were saying, if we're having inconsistencies as a college, it's easier for us to say that because, you know, like, oh, if we basically miss a week of practice due to whatever, you know, some community teams don't have practices for 4 weeks. And so it's I know it's hard for that. But for us in particular, right before nationals, it was tough because we had a bunch of weather issues and our university was closing all of the fields because they would just get tore up. And so, like, we understand that. A few practices indoors on basketball courts that we could rent out through the university. And it was different, but it felt like it worked really well for us. It was almost like being in a different area kind of like revitalized us just slightly. And we had actually a few really good practices indoors, and I was super happy and surprised with that because I thought people were going to take it less serious since, you know, we were inside and all that kind of stuff. But we usually don't. Even if we get physical, we usually don't tackle to the ground anyways during practice just because we don't want to. We don't want anybody getting tangled up. We'll hit still, but we try not to go to the ground. But when it was indoors, we were still able to wrap up and hit and stuff like that. And we focused really on what we call situationals, which is basically putting one team, let's say the defensive side, in a certain situation where they have to react a certain way and get it right. So if they have one bludger and the other team is bringing both bludgers down to beat both beaters, team on defense has to react right and do it right and get it right. And we'll run that a bunch of times. And that's really what we focus on towards the end of the year is situationals and actual like team flow rather than individual skill and like beater drills and chaser drills, stuff like that. We find that it helps us a lot more in the big tournaments is getting our team flow right and really being able to handle those certain situations and at least making everybody see and notice what's going on in those situations so that we at least have an idea of how to react.
That sounds like a good situational awareness sort of thing. I know there are a lot of teams that like to prioritize playing the situation versus playing your zone or playing rules and trying to apply those rules to the situation as opposed to gaining the experience. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on the putting them in the situation as opposed, well, I like the putting them in situation as opposed to sending someone a set of rule books or a set of lists to say, this is what you do in this situation when you have one bludger, when we have two, when we have the quaffle at halfway up to the field, this is what positioning you're going to be. I really think that the best way to learn Quidditch is to get on the field and experience it with your players. One of the more difficult things with Lone Star practicing this team with this team this year was the geographical distance. It was really a big hurdle for us. Lone Star Quidditch Club is a community team based out of Austin, very similar to Cavalry, and they pull teams from all over the state and even out of state a lot of times. They have been historically a powerhouse. They are one of the teams that really likes to fight and fend off really any sort of slow ball Quidditch play, in my opinion, for the majority of the Southwest region. They really like to play hard-hitting ball when they were at practice. When they were on the pitch, they love to keep a quick-paced game because these are the guys that have been playing before when they still had to look down when brooms were up. Some of these people still played when we had capes and goggles. They played when you could lower your shoulder at the midline, snapping people's collarbones, taking them out of the game. They have a bit of a different experience with the violent side of this thing and the actual physicality that Quidditch in the Southwest region has really bred over the last couple of years. These cornbred football players and this willingness to tackle that has already been bred in the South, I believe, really transformed Quidditch in an interesting way. Because although we may have a standardized rule book in the U.S., you can see how it's changed up in the different countries around the world and how Quidditch is played just slightly different. How techniques like the Baylor difference or 1 1/2 defense or 1 1/2 for the beater setup were all made in different realms of Quidditch, where they had to worry about really aggressive beaters running up and tackling. They had to worry about the quickness and finesse of chasers or the as a unit. And it catered these styles of defenses where I believe experience is the best teacher. You're not going to be able to have a set of rules for everything that gets done on the pitch, for every team that you face. Hell, the team that we got beaten and kicked out by during bracket play, Bosnian, I had no clue who they were going into this. I couldn't have pulled it out of my head, and I worked for the Quidditch Post. I couldn't remember with everything getting jostled around in my brain because there's just so much Quidditch knowledge and so many teams playing that you can't plan for them all yet. We're still trying to get film of them all, be able to talk about them all. That's why we're here sitting about this month of May Quidditch Post today, so that we can spend the next 31 days talking about all the different teams in the Quidditch community, in the Quidditch area that's breeding these practices. From a Lone Star and personal perspective, it was very physical. They would tackle to the ground. It's something that I was actually pretty nervous about. I get hurt often. Anyone that knows me, has met me, knows that I'm clumsy beyond all get out. I work on however many people know concussions. I break bones. I tear muscles, but I love the sport. And as soon as I heal up, I'm back out there. Sometimes a little beforehand. But that mentality drives a lot of the community team players from what I've been seeing. It doesn't matter if they get hurt. Molly doesn't care if her wrist gets broken and she's trying to still make it to nationals weeks later, flies out for the second day again so you can do it. People that are tearing ACLs, tearing muscles, trying to heal up just in time. I was talking to Austin Erickson about his ACL thing when it first happened, even in the middle of it. He's still trying to make it feel better so he could go and play nationals. When you know that there was no way this man could run around after he torn a muscle that badly. It's that heart and that passion that I see these teams drive at practice, and what Lone Star really opened up to me of the passionate side of Quidditch players, not just the analytical, this is what we need to learn as rules, this is how you need to learn to tackle someone, this is how you need to learn to throw the qual. The game and learning how to communicate with your team, learning how to mesh and meld when you weren't practicing with someone every week, when you didn't know for a fact where that person was going to be because you don't practice with them 3-4 times a week. You don't see them during the off season. I drove to Austin 2 hours one way just to be at practices on Sundays. Lone Star practices during Wednesdays too, but that's still way short of a lot of community and college teams out there. I know that Cavalry had a strict regiment when they went into nationals, even starting the season. That one of the teams I applied for was Cavalry at first, and then Andrew Choi reminded me of the 100-mile radius that they had just put in place. Not say initialized. I don't know if they'd done this previous seasons, but that was the difference for their team community. You couldn't be outside that 100-mile radius because they wanted people practicing with one another so much. I think that drive really says a lot about the US Quidditch community as a whole, going back to the performance of the US Quidditch team in the World Cup at Frankfurt, Germany. Falling so far off that pedestal, getting dethroned by Australia, I think was a big testament to not being able to practice together. Not being able to have your players across from you. I think they had only a few communal practices, 2 or 3 as a group, and it was really pressing. From what I've seen, from what I've heard, it was not much of the coordination you want to build a team together. It was more of having the best players that we could mount up and throw them out there into the world and seeing if they could produce and think on their toes. And it just wasn't a surefire way to win. I think that really exposing our players and our teams to more experience and situational awareness, make sure that they are out there making contact, even if it isn't to the ground, is important. Making sure that they're running drills consistently, making sure they're running their laps at the beginning of practice, showing up on time. These are key things. And I can't express it enough as someone that has been consistently late to practices all throughout his Quidditch career. It took showing up and playing. I played for A&M for 2 years, and I didn't get hardly anywhere better in the last year that I have with Lone Star because my commitment was lacking. As soon as you put those cleats on the pitch, on the turf, as soon as Adrian continued to commit on the field, as soon as Peaches didn't give up, Alexis, for those who don't know, but Peaches, for those who are just tuning in, they work. They went through the tough times whenever the administration got difficult to deal with, when the coaches got frustrating, when you didn't want to listen to what your coach was having to say because they're the same age, younger than you, or trying to tell you to do something that just sounds stupid because they're trying to think a new way out, new thing about Quidditch, think outside the box. It gets difficult.
Yeah, that is something.
They get tired.
Back to you talking about experience. Like when my first year was like 2014 to 2015, and that was a year when A&M went from that Final Four team to I think 2 or 3 remaining players, or 3 of the same players from the past roster, and so we were all just trying to figure it out, like as just new people.
Very on the
and
fly.
Until I didn't really understand what beating was, or like what I was doing, until I played in a fantasy tournament. When I played in the fantasy tournament, that really taught me how to play with other people, and that just gave me a new perspective on what I was doing, and then it just clicked. So I think something that's really important is getting like that experience with other types of players.
Exposure to different situations.
I always tell our new players whenever we get new people, I'm like, please play at least one fantasy tournament, because I think it really develops your mindset and just gives you a perspective that you might have never gotten with your team, because say your team just has a different dynamic, and sometimes A&M has really struggled with having a good mindset and a motivating mindset. Like people will just get really set in their ways and kind of lose their fire until they go to a tournament, but that's too late. Like you have to have that fire throughout the season so you can keep practicing hard. But going to this fantasy tournament, and then the first time I ever saw the nationals like final, I was like, whoa, this is what Quidditch is supposed to be. It's really, really competitive, super cool. Like that's a level I want to be at. But it took me a little while, and I had to, experience it and watch other people. So I think, like you were saying, film's very important. Like, and
thank you, OSU.
Yeah, and OSU always has like amazing film. Like I think the best film. And then just getting that experience yourself and putting yourself in different situations where you are playing with players from not only within your region, but there was a guy on my fantasy team that was from Australia, and that was really, really cool. And he was a beater, and he taught me a few things that he would do that our other beaters wouldn't do, and it was like, oh, like that's smart. Like I wouldn't have never really thought of that. So
regional techniques.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that little tidbit.
That's a spectacular little bit. I think it's a nice little segue talking about seeding Saturday. So we're going to talk about the pool distribution, how everyone ended up seeding after the first day of pool play. We're going to talk a little about how the scores went out, but we're running out of time, and I'd like to kind of talk about how we made our seating order and competed on a national stage from our different pools, especially since Texas A&M and OSU were in the same pool.
We were not.
No, we're not. Oh, that was really good. This is what I fact checkers. Ohio State.
Yeah, a different OSU.
Gets me every time. I hate Akron. Thank you. Well, at least that makes a little difference. Sorry, I apologize, sir. Would you mind leading us in if you
I'll
don't
forgive
mind?
you.
If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about OSU's performance, since I have completely talked out of my butt on that one, and just highlighting the 4 games that y'all played, how you worked out, whether or not y'all were in snitch range, because I know Texas A&M had a big issue with grabbing the snitch, but they still seeded second in their pool. So I want to try and open up the discussion on the importance of staying within snitch range early on in the game, especially with highlights in the finals game, where Texas State led for damn near the entirety of the game, and then Cavalry just had to catch the snitch to take them into victory and into gold.
Well, overall, I thought we did a really good job. Our first game against the Funky Quaffles, we started really slow and really sloppy, and we kept turning the ball over, missing shots, missing dunks, and they played really well. They were capitalizing on every mistake we made, and they were playing solid offense and solid defense. And about midway through the game, we finally really were able to do what we know we're capable of doing, and we were really stopping them on defense, scoring. We got, and then towards the end, we got 3 goals up, basically right before the snitch got pulled, and it was, I don't even know how long. It was only a couple minutes the snitch was on the pitch, and we had another drive, and it was actually really sad. We scored and got 4 goals up, and then they pulled the snitch. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not exactly how we or they obviously would want it to end, but there was no deferral of the snitch catch, obviously, because there was no referee call or anything like that, and so that's how the game ended. And I was disappointed just in the beginning of the game, but I was also happy that we at least had enough resolve to stay in it and be like, okay, we're a lot better than this. And then
better than that. The display that y'all had at the Southwest Regionals was just phenomenal. Loved playing against y'all there.
Yeah, it was. We love going down to regionals. It's always a big thing for us. And then our second game was against I believe it was Lake Erie, in the middle of the day, and that was a grind of a game. It was in the middle of the day, and it was our hottest game for sure, heat-wise. And we knew that they were going to have really good chasers, but I was really questioning their beating. And I had talked to a couple sources about them. I mean, because you reach out to people.
Ooh, collusion. I like it.
And they said that their beaters would be better than ours, but I was really doubting that. And because I knew a few names. Obviously, I knew Andrew on the chasing core. I played with him on Team USA, and I knew their chasing core and their ideas about chasing were going to be similar to ours, physical, fast, driving wise. And basically, when Snitch came out on the pitch, it turned into here's the ball, run down with me. If I get hit, I'm going to pass it to you, and you're going to dunk. It turned into a crazy score fest, because none of our beaters could keep up. They would run over and try to beat Seeker, and then they'd have to try to come back and help us on defense, and it was going to be too late. And so it turned into a crazy score fest, and we ended up catching the snitch, and that was an amazing game. They were good sports, and I basically turned into like a mini bandwagon fan, I guess, after we played them, and we were rooting for them for the rest of the tournament. It was really cool. They were really all good sports, really physical. And then our third game was against Marquette, and that game was awful for us. There was some referee stuff that was, in my opinion, really bad, and I hold myself to a pretty high standard when it comes to being a referee, and I make my team also hold that standard. And it got into our heads. We had one of our players had to leave in an ambulance, and I tried to, rally the group, but it still got in my head. I was playing different after that as well.
Yeah.
And basically it was within range, and it shouldn't have been. Marquette really disappointed me in basically how they played and the way they handled the game. But they played well and smart to beat us, and so I'll give them 100% credit in that. And they kept it within range, and they caught the snitch, and there was nothing we could do about that. And that game is one that we wish we could have back. But then our last game against Rochester, it was good in the beginning, real solid start in the beginning, and then basically their double male beater set with all their experience and their talent just really locked down their defense. They didn't even try to. They were ahead. We weren't in range, and so they weren't even trying to defend the snitch at all. And that's pretty much when we knew we had to really start doing something crazy to try to make a comeback. But they locked it down. They were doing really well that game, and so we ended up losing to them. But overall, I was happy with it. We wish we could have that one game from Marquette back. But I think it was a much better representation of what we can do and what we are always striving to do. The past couple of years, we've kind of landed short of any of our goals, and it was still we felt the same way about this year. But the Lake Erie victory was, people were doubting it, and we knew we could do it, and we did it, and so I was happy about that. That's
great to hear. Well, do a little segue in here. Just remind me, y'all were seated 24th, I believe, right?
24th or 23rd, one of those two. I can't remember exactly.
The next one, because I want to make sure we weren't taking Ohio State again, or I wasn't, because 24th actually had Silver Phoenix seating 23rd. And I think that's a really nice little segue and highlight, especially with how the two teams have played off and how they are viewed within the Southwest region. So taking away Kissimmee for a second, let's think about how Oklahoma State and Silver Phoenix are really viewed when we were going into Southwest regionals, when we were going paired up, because Silver has really been underrated as a secondary team from Texas A&M in College Station area for years. They didn't even make it to nationals last year. They were just barely able to skirt their bit along in the third round, the tertiary bracket of the Southwest Regionals, and one of the last teams to really make in and slide their way in. Adrian, would you mind talking a little bit about the games that y'all played?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. We were definitely considered an underdog. To start off, our first game was Mizzou.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what a way to start the day.
They seeded number 3 when we went into Saturday, so to give you a little bit of scale on a national stage.
Yeah, and honestly, it was, I'm not going to say they didn't earn the win. They definitely 100% earned the win. I think that if Silver Phoenix had cleared up a few of the mistakes that we did, we definitely could have picked up a win. But I'm, again, not discrediting Mizzou. They did a fantastic job. One of their beaters, this girl, we ran for the bludger, and she hit me in the mouth with her broom. It was like they called the whistle for something else, and she just looked at her eyes, said everything. I'm so sorry. And I was like, don't worry about it.
Happens.
If it happens,
it's part of Quidditch.
I'm just gonna knock you down to get the bludger.
Yeah, that's right. Just get back up.
Yeah. No, but and after we shook hands and like, hey, great game. I really enjoyed beating against you. Next game was Crimson Elite, and something that really stood out from Crimson Elite was their keeper.
Really? Okay.
He has the wingspan of an airplane.
The Augie arms.
No. Like when someone, I think it was Keaton. Keaton's the keeper for Silver Phoenix. He would run around the hoop the hoops and try to go to a very far one, and the keeper could still get it. Like, just without even trying. Like I don't know how to explain it. The only way I could explain it is if he was a Jedi. That's the only way I could explain it.
Mixing our fandoms here.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Super Hulock over here, and we just might have to do a special podcast on May the 4th Be With You Day. QP today.
Next was Southern Storm, and I can't really say anything that stood out of Southern Storm. They're just an overall great team to play against. They were definitely something that I enjoyed out of that team is they would always go for the chest, but not in a comfortable area where you can catch it, just like right below your neck. And I always had a hard time with the guy beater. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was a fun game to play against. In the last game, Boise State.
Jesus God.
Everyone thought we were going to lose that game.
I know.
People were cheering us on. Just
Underdogs.
Yeah. And the fun story about that game is our coaches came up to us and said, it's not going to be easy. USQ-wise, at that point, I don't know about now, I haven't checked, they're ranked higher than Texas A&M. And y'all know how A&M plays.
Rankings can say a lot, but they don't say the whole story, in my opinion.
No, definitely. That's absolutely definite. And to add to that, I think it was either Aaron Deering or Ryan McKay. One of the two said, you can't just win. You have to win by 50 points.
Now, they yell it or they whisper it? Because I'd probably discern who was.
At the beginning, they whispered it.
Okay. It probably wasn't Ryan. But I saw like a couple silver players coming up like, oh yeah, we played great today, but we're probably not going to make it. We still have a game against Boise. It's going to be difficult. We're out of range. I don't even think we have to max them out to make it.
You had to get 50 points. They had to win by 50 points in order to qualify.
Yeah.
Their morale, even from an outside perspective, didn't look too well until their coaches got a handle on them.
And they kept scoring, and they were really above us. Then we caught up. Then they went up again. Then we caught up. Then we tied. And we went up by 1. And they scored 2. So trying to get to 6.
Back and forth.
Yeah. Until we finally scored 2, and Juan Acevedo just caught the snitch. And in disbelief, we all ran to the pitch. I lost my voice. I shed a few more tears. Like, we beat the Northwest Regional Champions to make it to day 2.
And that's the Silver Phoenix Southwest team. Think about how they're viewed and have been seating for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, we're
perspective on the national scale, guys.
I guess we're not just a B team anymore.
Y'all were never just a B team. There were people that cared enough to keep on playing Quidditch, even though there are only 21 spots on a roster. That's what I love about Quidditch is that even if you do have those people that want to keep committing, if you have enough, you have another team. You have a community team that can come out and play now and come and fight. You just got to make sure that you keep showing up because everyone is equal out there on that pitch. It's the people that work harder at practice and watch their film and study, in my opinion, that make it to the end. It's one of the reasons why I praise Augie so much, even as a competitor, for how much he watches film and how seriously he takes the game. And it really shows with how Cavalry bred an amazing atmosphere in the Southwest region just to compete in so that we could fight with these different play styles, with these teams that were ready to fight, weren't being lax at practice, weren't taking it easy because they wanted to get better. And that forces you to become better. I think it's a great way to inspire your team and light that fire under your butt. Peach, mind talking to us a little bit about Texas A&M's performance during pool play?
Yep, most of the game, our first 4 games, which were against Appalachian, Anteater, and Ohio State. I think our first one was Ohio State. Since it's been a while, I can't remember specific things from each game except for the Florida's Finest game, which was our last one of the day. But really, we played very well, beater-wise, I'd say. Our only thing in the first game is we had to get in sync with our beaters and our chasers and just make sure our timing wasn't off.
That first game warmed up.
And really, I thought that our beaters played very well together. And I was worried about that because, like I had said earlier, our roster had not been the same for a single tournament. Harris missed regionals completely.
Harris was sick because of you. Sorry, little side note, didn't mean to interrupt. Adrian got this whole household sick. He took out players from A&M. He dang near took me out. I got done with the cold right before now. Yeah. Oh, I still had the cold when I was there. Biological warfare.
Really, I think I had only played with Harris 1 or 2 tournaments the whole year, and I was I'm wondering how this is even going to go. I know we played really, really, really well together last year, so mostly I played with Daniel. the whole season. And really, Daniel and Harris were only 2 guy beaters.
Yeah.
That's really, and like,
amazing in their own regard, but they can't take you through a tournament.
right. And so, well, I could argue with that because their endurance is really good, but it's still hard. But you have to have both of them. That's the thing. You have to have both. And really, throughout all 4 of our games, our beaters clicked pretty well. There might have been some games that were slower than others, but we weren't like extremely challenged until the Florida Finest game. And this one was a very good game. Like it was very physical. It was just like a fast-paced, like hard-hitting physical game. So people can complain about the refs, but really, like the head ref was great. I don't know what his name was, but he was like level-headed. Like wanted to listen to what our coaches had to say and like why we were arguing a certain way. He's very polite about it, and, like willing to listen, not just like being like, "Hey, shut up" or anything. So he was like a good, a voice of reason, yeah. And my main complaint about that game was the snitch. I think there needs to be something in place about athleticism. Like if you're snitch, like I've seen many snitches. Sneakers. He was wearing sneakers and he tripped and the guy pulled it. Like I feel like there needs to be some regulation on. Yeah. First of all, you have to be able to have some sort of athleticism, some sort of background that will present a challenge to your world's best, seeker. At least that you could defend off for, I don't know, at least
that's true.
20 seconds. I don't know. And I don't think there's a very even feel because I've witnessed many snitches who I'm like, this should not be on a national level. Yeah. And that's very unfair to teams, I think. Like, I think we were tied, or no, A&M was ahead by 3.
That was a very hard game to watch. I was on the sidelines.
A&M was ahead by 2 when this was pulled, and like also both of our beaters got cards, so there were no beaters. And like our seeker couldn't defend because they had both bludgers. So I mean, really, it was just him one-on-one with the snitch who could not defend himself. It just slipped, and I was like, what? And then I've seen kind of stuff like that in other people's games too, where they're coming back, or they're a team that has a chance, but the snitch is just too bad. Like they just can't fight for it. And I think that's something that needs to be worked on in Quidditch is consistencies in that kind of fairness, to where both teams have to have a challenge in getting the snitch. And so, I mean, they don't have to be the most athletic person in the world, but they need to be somebody who can actually, somebody who's actually going to be able to pose some sort of challenge. And that was the only thing that really made me mad. Like I really liked playing Florida's Finest. Like very physical team, good team, very classy team. Really classy team. They're always like so nice and really good competition for us. And no matter like how physical it gets on the field, like off the field, we know like, hey, like we're just both very competitive, like physical teams, but we respect each other. And so I really enjoyed that game, but it was very hard, obviously, because we really wanted to win. And I just think that as a whole, Quidditch needs to work on making the sport, like bringing it up athletically more and more each year, which we are doing. Clearly, it's getting, how people used to say that the Southwest is extremely dominant athletically. Now we're seeing that it's all over the place. Like a lot of teams from all sorts of regions are very athletic. But we need to work on consistencies within reffing and consistencies within like snitches, because Appleby, you've had to have seen just the inconsistencies in snitches just all over the place, and refs, of course. And we think we need to implement some sort of system that's not just like, hey, like if you don't provide assistant refs, you're out of the tournament. Because that's just out of fear, and people are like, well, okay, I guess I'll do it. I mean, I'm not confident in my ref skills, but I'll do it. But if there's some sort of, I don't know, incentive or I don't have an idea for this, but I just think it needs to be worked on, that so every team brings good assistant refs, or at least assistant refs who are familiar with the rules to a degree that will that will create games that are less inconsistent.
I'm going to use that opportunity to kind of stress upon how teams not only staying, when I'm talking about off and on the pitch, taking the ref tests, taking them seriously, reading your rule books, and making sure they actually know the rules from this year. Rule books change on a year-to-year basis, guys, and saying, oh, that's supposed to be a blue card, that's supposed to be a yellow card.
Nobody really knows sometimes, and
they act like they do. There's a lot of confidence in the Quidditch community right now with what people think are cards and what they don't. And while I agree completely that we need people that are on top of their game, rest and relaxed as possible, to be the snitch, to be the assistant refs, to be the head refs, that's not always the real-world option. We don't always have access to the quickest, refreshed snitch because they're playing. They're people that are so in love with Quidditch that they'll play the sport and still be a snitch and tire themselves out and take themselves away from the team for a little bit and give that bit of a commitment up because they want to make sure that the game is possible for the other players. I myself have only been able to make it through the assistant ref and I believe the snitch ref test. I've still been working on reading the entirety of the rulebook, so I feel confident enough to stand out there with my whistle and cards and call a game safely and fairly. I've been doing this for 3.5, 4 years now, and I still don't have 100% confidence with it. So that's why I really want to stress exposure to the rules, making sure your team reads them, not just saying this is what it is at practice. Go double check your coaches whenever they say that this is the strategy that we're using because you're allowed to rip the bludger out while you have a bludger in your hand, or things like that are smaller technical rules that can really change it up, that nuance things that new refs don't really know.
Yeah, there's obviously it's almost impossible for people to have 3 to 4 people per team who know every single rule. But I think if they're going to be an assistant rep, you need to be familiar with the rules that are most likely to happen in a situation, like very familiar with it, like especially in beater play, because that's a lot of there's so many rules, and there's so many rules in Quidditch, which is one of the problems why we have inconsistencies with refs. But these people really, really need to be familiar with the things that are generally going to happen, just like rough beater play or like from behind or pushing or kicking like with a hand or whatever.
Being aware.
Just being confident in your calls too, which comes from knowing the rules.
Knowing experience. Now, we are running short on time because we're going to try and keep these podcasts to about an hour, so I'm going to try and do a quick recap of Lone Star whenever we were doing pool play. Just so for those tuning in, A&M ended up seeding 14 for the day, Silver Phoenix seeded 23rd, and OSU ended up, Oklahoma State University, because they're in their acronyms, seeded 24th for the day in their respective brackets, or their respective pools. Lone Star was lucky enough to seed first out of all of these because we had the biggest distribution in our points, because we were able to max out games, because we were able to pull the snitch, and our beaters on the pitch, when snitch is on pitch, are amazing, phenomenal. Loved having Duquette, loved having Molly, loved having chasers like Becca DuPont, just able to complement them and get next to the hoop, take the hits, and play ferociously, even when you don't know what's going to be in front of you. Our first game of the day for pool play, was against the Richmond Ravens. I actually got things mixed up and thought we were playing ASU, Arizona State University, and so I was staring down those ponchos, those yellow and black ponchos the whole morning. I'm like, okay, so size you up, okay, I can probably tackle you, I could hit you, I can score past you, okay, we got this. They were the team that was really number 1 ranked when we were in our pool. Lone Star came in as number 2, so it was kind of my hope for the day that we could establish our dominance going into bracket play and get us a good bracket for play. Richmond Ravens wasn't too much of a difficult game. We had to warm up a little bit. I got to play a little more in that game than a lot of the others, and it was just a good way to start up the day. But you still saw those ponchos on the sidelines. I still saw those ASU players sitting as a team watching and analyzing the other people that were playing. The other people from a lot of the teams that ended up not making it to the second day that I just saw lackadaisically walking around the field, even while we were playing. I kind of noticed and caught my eye whenever I would drift away when we were out of snitch range. But those teams that stayed near the pitch, they stayed together, congregated, and would watch teams they were competing against, ended up performing a little better later in the day. I got to talk to some Arizona State players and seeing how they were preparing, not just from the film or what they'd done everything leading up, but they were getting ready while they were there. They were planning up until the minute that they heard brooms up. They were going to make themselves better. And it was just an amazing thing to see, even while we were playing, because I didn't know how well Lone Star was going to be received. I'd been with A&M, and that was really downtrodden after we had lost that Final Four run team. We'd really fallen off the map, so there wasn't a lot of hype behind A&M. It was more, let's gather it again. And playing with those all-stars, being able to support players like Cody Marshall, Eric Woolworth, freaking Jonathan Rulin, and just everyone on this Lone Star team was stunning. With that, I would like to remind people that you don't have to play to be a part of the team. There are times when you're not going to play a game. There are times when you're not going to step foot on a pitch for that entire 18, 19, 30 minutes because you need your best 5, 6, 7 players out there rotating through, because you're facing the number 1 team from a region, because you need to get that 50-point differential. And while we try to be an equal opportunity and inclusive sport, there are times where you need the very best that your team can muster in that situation. And a lot like sport. Yeah, and a lot like you were talking earlier, Mr. Appleby, about situational awareness. I think it's those people that are ready for the situation that have the most experience that are ready a lot of times. And it can build a lot of animosity from what I've seen. People get upset when they're not allowed to play because they've spent this time, this money, this effort to come to these trips to not play and to sit on the sidelines. I've heard about people complaining about being called water boy when they're sitting on the sidelines with their teams that are kicking butts, and being there as a supportive player when they're playing the teams that aren't ranked number 1 and 2, when these key players need some rest, when they need to get off the pitch, and supporting them in those off games. You have 4 pool play games. You can't have all your best players on the pitch at one time. You have to score the highest distribution you can. You have to have your beaters running as quick as you can, get every snitch that you can during pool play and during round robin tournaments to set that distribution. That is why I believe that Lone Star was able to get number 1 as a seeding and then still get knocked out in round 16, because we were able to distribute our team during the first day, and we did a much better job at rotating through equal relaxation and made sure that everyone was well rested and off the pitch when they were tired. If you were huffing and puffing and you were jogging, get off. Someone else is ready to go, and you can rest up and be all much better than tiring yourself to a point of no return. And I think that is really the biggest summation of all the games that Lone Star played, because that was really the repetitive over and over again. Let's play our game. Let's play the defense that we prepared up. Let's drive the ball whenever they don't have a beater. That was it. That was really the simple recipe to keep going. Excellent beater play with snitch on pitch, and you're golden, you're sealed. You have the number 1 seed. But you have to remember it going into day 2. And that's where we fell down. And since we didn't have time to talk about it this time, I'd like to encourage y'all two here and Mr. Appleby, if we have more time during the week or sometime during this month of May, for us to get back together as a Southwest region, maybe jump on with Taylor Tracy from UTSA and try to get more Southwest feel about bracket play, because there are still so many games to talk about. We didn't even get into nearly half of them. Do a little wrap up for right now. Let's just kind of talk about anything that we want to say as a wrap up or round up, because I know we're going to find a couple of us back. Adrian, I know, is going to be sitting in on this. Peaches, I'm going to bother you enough during the summer since you're going to be stuck in College Station.
I am going to be here.
Mr. Appleby, whenever you have free time and some Wi-Fi connection, I'd love to be able to sit down and talk about this again.
Yeah, I think good wrap up. Peaches, I loved your referee and snitch thing. That's always a big issue in our community. I think just taking it more serious, honestly. I know snitches. Obviously, Gabe is in our region, and he got snitch of the year, and he's fantastic because he takes it serious. Long time ago when I first started, Gabe, I met his father, and his dad actually told me that they filmed me when I was a seeker, so that Gabe could prepare for me and other seekers.
Oh, wow.
I think take it serious. I take reffing super serious because I know how it feels to feel like the ref cheated you. And I don't ever want a team to ever feel like that. And so I take it super serious, and I make my team take it serious, and I make them know the rules. Anytime there's even a slight discrepancy when we don't understand a rule, I go look it up immediately, and we go over it as a team. And I think that's something that people could really take into. And Southwest, Best West, my opinion. I always got to say that. Overall, we love going down to Texas, play you guys. We love going to nationals, and if you take the Southwest, I think throughout the season, and I don't know for sure because I don't travel to the other regions during season, but we play each other like we are all rivals, all at the same tournament, every game. And then we go to nationals, and it's literally like we're a family all of a sudden. And I don't understand it, but I love it. And so it's fantastic to me. And that if I had to do a wrap up of the Southwest, that's what it is. We will bust each other up during the season, and then we are brothers when it comes to nationals.
No, I couldn't agree more, Hayden.
That's so true.
I couldn't agree more.
We respect each other.
So true.
That is true. And y'all's game with Mizzou.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Mizzou? Yeah, it was
That Mizzou game.
UT and all other Texas teams that normally were rivals was there chanting Southwest, Best West, Best West.
Yeah.
But yeah, if y'all don't know, I mean, if anybody watching, A&M and UT have had a 100+ year rivalry just within the state. And then we switched, to the SEC, so then we don't really have that rivalry anymore, but it's still there. But it's really cool to see. Like, I was on the field and I turned around and I'm good friends with Hallie Pace from UT, another girl beater, and I just saw her and a lot of UT's team just cheering us on, and that was just really cool. From behind our bench, and that was just really cool to see this camaraderie within the actual region. And it was Southwest, let's go. And so it was really, really cool.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for now because we've gone a little bit over an hour. Sorry, guys. There's just so much to talk about. Once again, I'm going to try and jump in with these guys for another Southwest recap, maybe get a few people join in with us from the region. Look out for the Quidditch Post, month of May, QP Today's podcast series. We're going to try and do these from all the other 7 regions around the U.S. We're working on getting you a couple podcasts from talking about the European Quidditch Cup along with the Quidditch Cup Canada. We have a couple podcasters in Canada and throughout Europe that give amazing perspectives, and it's taken us too long to get their podcasts out. The EQC recap podcast is on the Quidditch Post website, Facebook page. If you haven't checked it out, I'm just going to do a little shameless marketing right here with the QuidditchPost.com. We have a brand new website. Go check it out for all our articles getting archived, all our podcasts we're getting online. We're trying to build our game film archive. See the spectacular game film that OSU has been able to help us build and provide so that everyone out there can become a better ref, a better player, and just help grow that Quidditch family. It has been an absolute pleasure. Make sure you tune in on Monday nights at 6 o'clock Central. We are going to be continuing these every Monday, focusing on the other 3 regions that were able to make it to the Elite 8. During the week, we're going to try and gather with other regional teams, players, coaches, or referees to try and give you a better look at the staff. But those are going to be a little more impromptu when they go up. We'll try to keep you informed whenever we're doing these. And thank you for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. Once again, I'm Alberto Coronado with the Quidditch Post.
I'm Alexis Wynn from Texas A&M.
I'm Adrian Martinez from the Quidditch Post and Silver Phoenix.
And I'm Hayden Appleby from Oklahoma State University.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, and well, gig 'em. Have a good time playing Quidditch, guys. See y'all next time.